Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. The clapping still echoes in my ears. That polite, cheerful applause you hear at weddings, when everything's beautiful and warm and hopeful. Except, I was clapping for a lie. I just didn't know it yet. It started with a toast. Not mine. Not hers. Not the best man's either. It came from someone no one had planned to hear from. Some guy named Beckett, who claimed to be a childhood friend of my bride. Funny, I'd never heard his name before. Neither had my parents. And based on the way Piper's hand gripped her champagne glass, neither had she expected him to grab the mic. I just wanted to say, he began, pausing like he was carefully choosing which bomb to drop, that watching you up there, Piper, brought back everything. People laughed politely. I forced a smile. Beckett smiled too, but it wasn't casual. It was the kind of smile someone wears when they've been holding a secret for too long and finally get to taste daylight. I remember when we danced under that busted streetlight in junior year. You were barefoot, it was raining, and you said. Piper stood up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. Beckett, she cut in, thank you. That's enough. The room chuckled. Someone whistled. Cutting him off already, huh? She laughed, but it was hollow. Let's get back to celebrating. That should have been the moment I asked her who he really was. That should have been when I walked her outside and said, tell me now. But instead, I told myself it didn't matter. Because she married me. I had the ring. I had the vows. I had the right. Right? After dinner, we opened the dance floor. Our first dance had ended. The parent dances had ended. The playlist shifted into something slow again, too slow. And without a word to me, Piper turned, walked straight toward Beckett, and held out her hand. He didn't even hesitate. His hand found the small of her back like it had muscle memory. They danced like they'd done it 1,000 times before. No nervous laughter. No oops, I stepped on you. Just smooth. Familiar. Quiet. Like I wasn't even there. And that's when I realized something. I wasn't watching two old friends share a memory. I was watching a reunion. One I wasn't supposed to witness. She wore my ring. But that night, her eyes never once looked for me. After the dance, I stood there like a third wheel at my own wedding. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being ridiculous. Maybe Beckett really was just some hometown guy caught up in the moment. But then I started noticing things, tiny details that peeled back the skin of the night, like old wallpaper, hiding cracks underneath. Beckett didn't have a seat. Not a place card, not a plate, not even a favor bag. Everyone else had been accounted for down to the plus ones and kids' meals. But not him. When I asked the planner discreetly, she said, he wasn't on the final guest list, but your wife told us he'd be joining last minute. My wife. I cornered Piper in the hallway near the restrooms, pretending I was just looking for a moment of quiet. Hey, I said, forcing a smile. I didn't know Beckett was coming. She didn't look startled, just calculated, like she was bracing for something. He texted me the night before, said he was in town. I figured it'd be rude not to let him swing by. We were close a long time ago. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. A stranger speaks at our wedding, slow dances with my bride in front of everyone, and she tells me it's not a big deal. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. Because what was I going to do? Argue with her at the reception? Accuse her of something I couldn't even name yet? But my gut was screaming. During the rest of the night, I watched her when she wasn't looking. She talked to people, smiled, took pictures, and yet, she never once glanced at me the way she looked at Beckett on that dance floor. I began to wonder how long that history between them really was. How much of it she'd edited before introducing herself to me. Because something about Beckett didn't feel new. It felt like a leftover. A piece she never fully let go of. Later, after we cut the cake and did the sparkler send-off, we got into the car that was supposed to take us to the cabin we'd rented. I should have been excited. I should have been drunk on love and champagne. But instead, all I could think about was how, when she kissed me in front of everyone, she kept her eyes open, watching something, or someone. We reached the cabin in silence. She blamed the exhaustion, and I didn't argue. But while she went to shower, I sat at the edge of the bed, picked up her phone, which I'd never done before, and stared at the screen like it was a ticking bomb. I didn't unlock it. I didn't have the passcode. I just sat there, holding it, wondering why this tiny object felt heavier than our marriage license. Then I noticed a message flash on the screen. One line, one name, no photo, just, Beckett, you look just like you used to. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't touch her. She curled up next to me like nothing had happened, breathing soft and steady. But I just lay there with my eyes open, wondering if I was already the third person in a two-person story, and if our wedding had been a happy ending for them, not for me. I spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, my body next to hers, but my mind miles away. Every creak in the wood, every gust of wind through the trees outside made my heart race like something was about to happen. But nothing did. Piper slept soundly, peacefully, like she hadn't slow danced with a stranger-turned memory in front of her husband and everyone they knew. I told myself I'd confront her in the morning, that I'd ask who he really was, why she never mentioned him, and what that message meant. But when I looked at her in the early light, hair messy, face relaxed, her arm draped over me like nothing was wrong, I hesitated. I didn't want to start our marriage with accusations. I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure guy she eventually resented. So I lied. To her. To myself. Said nothing. That morning, we made pancakes. She wore my hoodie. She laughed at my sad attempt to flip one. I pretended everything was fine, but I still hadn't forgotten the message. So while she went outside to take a call, I heard her say, "Hey, hold on, I can't talk long." I opened her phone. I don't even remember deciding to do it. My fingers just moved like they already knew the pattern. And there it was. The full message thread. It wasn't just a one-liner. It was months of messages, hidden under a contact saved as Lena, her college roommate, the one she always said was bad at texting. They'd been messaging for at least 6 weeks before the wedding. Not daily, just enough. Enough to feel like something was building. A slow, familiar rhythm between two people who weren't supposed to be in sync anymore. The worst part wasn't even the flirting, the compliments, the remember when's. It was how she never once mentioned me. Not a single "my fiancé." Not even a casual "we're getting married." It was like I didn't exist. Or like I was just the person she was marrying while someone else lived in her heart rent-free. I didn't confront her that day either. I told myself I needed proof. Something undeniable. A smoking gun, not just my paranoia and vague text threads. That opportunity came faster than I expected. That night, we went for a walk in the woods behind the cabin. It was cold. She wrapped her arms around mine, and for a moment, I let myself believe again. But halfway through the trail, she pulled out her phone to take a photo of the sunset over the lake. I smiled. I leaned in. She took the picture. Then she went to post it on her story. I watched her finger hover over the text box. She typed, "Perfect view with my favorite person." But then she paused, backspaced, and replaced it with, "Nature's magic." No tag. No mention of me. Just nature. And then, I still don't know why, she opened her hidden album in front of me. I don't think she realized it. Maybe she thought she was somewhere else in the gallery. But for 2 full seconds, I saw a blurred image of her in a mirror, wearing something I didn't recognize, and Beckett standing behind her, shirtless, holding her waist. She caught it too late. Closed the phone. Laughed nervously. "Oh God, I opened the wrong thing," she said. I didn't ask. She didn't explain. We walked back to the cabin in silence. That night, I didn't lie awake. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel hurt. Just numb. Like someone had taken a marker and drawn a thick, black line between before and after, and I was stuck on the wrong side of it. But I wasn't going to ask her anymore. I was going to find the truth myself. Quietly. Completely. Because if she was hiding something from me on the first week of our marriage, I needed to know everything, before the rest of my life turned into one long dance I was never invited to. I didn't ask questions. Not out loud, anyway. I just walked through the next few days like I was sleepwalking through someone else's honeymoon. Piper posted curated photos of forests, food, and sunsets, each one carefully cropped to keep me out of frame. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shocked anymore. I was studying, watching her more closely than I ever had before. And with every glance, every flicker in her eyes, I saw it. Something she was trying to hold back. Something she didn't want me to see. The image I'd caught, the one in her hidden album, haunted me. I couldn't unsee it, no matter how hard I tried. Her in a green slip dress I'd never seen in person. His arm around her waist. Her head tilted back in a way that looked far too comfortable. But even worse was the date I found when I snuck another look. It was taken 11 days before the wedding. 11. That same night, I searched our bags. I don't even know what I hoped to find. Proof? An explanation? Something to scream "You're not crazy, Irving." In the zipped compartment of her duffel, I found the dress. The exact same one from the photo. It still smelled like her perfume, but also faintly of something unfamiliar. Not quite cologne. Something earthy, like damp clothes left too long in a car. I held it in my hands like it was radioactive. Later, I casually asked her, "Where's that green dress you wore for the bachelorette dinner?" She blinked like I'd spoken a different language, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, I didn't bring it. I left it with my sister." But we both knew the dress was folded right between her pajamas and a sweatshirt she hadn't touched all week. She didn't even flinch when she lied. That's what broke me more than anything, the ease of it. Still, I said nothing. I smiled. I made her tea. I even kissed her forehead before bed. And I wrote everything down in the Notes app on my phone. Like a detective, documenting a crime no one else believed had happened. Or maybe like a ghost trying to prove he'd ever existed in someone else's story. Back in the city, reality hit hard. Piper went straight back to work, diving into her event planning job like nothing had happened. I wandered through our apartment like a stranger in a staged home. Every photo on the wall now looked like a lie. Every drawer I opened felt like a door to something I'd missed. She moved through life like a woman newly married, but never once did she talk about Beckett again. Never explain why he was there, why he spoke, why he danced with her like I wasn't watching. One night, she left her laptop open while she showered. I told myself not to look. I really did. But curiosity doesn't ask for permission. It just moves. And what I found froze me in place. There was a deleted folder in the trash bin, recently emptied. I restored it. Inside were PDFs, scanned letters, messages, screenshots of texts between her and Beckett that went back years. Some of them even predated me. But others? Others were from just weeks before our wedding. In one, she wrote, "I don't know what I'm doing. It's like the universe keeps pushing us together at the worst times." In another, "You always knew me better than anyone else." And in one final note, just days before we said, "I do," she'd written, "I know I should choose safety. But what if safety isn't love?" I don't remember shutting the laptop. I don't remember walking away. I just remember sitting in the dark living room, staring at the TV that was turned off, and seeing my own reflection. She had married me, but she had chosen him, at least in her heart. I wasn't in denial anymore. I was in danger of becoming the man who let himself be a placeholder in his own marriage. So I started planning. Not revenge, not confrontation, just clarity. I needed to know everything she wouldn't say. And if I had to follow breadcrumbs in the dark to find the truth, so be it. Because the dance was over, and I wasn't clapping anymore. I didn't want to become that guy, the one who snoops, who spies, who spirals in his own apartment. But I already was. I had a calendar pulled up on my laptop, dates circled in red, messages copied into a private document, a spreadsheet tracking hotel confirmations, text timestamps, and the addresses of 2 restaurants I'd never been to, but had found through her email receipts. I even made a folder on my desktop and named it something stupid like budget stuff, just in case she ever looked. And all the while, she was living her life like a woman in love. Morning kisses, grocery lists, Netflix in bed. But it was always surface level. Her affection felt like a script she was committed to performing well, never overacting, never stumbling, just enough to keep the illusion going. One night, while she was in the kitchen making pasta, her iPad pinged with a notification. She never used it for anything but Pinterest and recipe videos. But this was a calendar alert. Dinner at 7:30 p.m. Friday. A place called Marlowe's in Midtown. Just one guest listed. No table for 2. But the email confirmation on her phone, which I found later when she went to shower, said reservation for 2 under Beckett R. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Or maybe she thought I was too blind to see it. Too soft, too unsure of myself to question anything. And maybe she was right. I wasn't confrontational. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even really know how to say what I felt. I just watched her dry her hair in the mirror and wondered what kind of man she saw when she looked at me. A husband? A mistake? A backup plan? I decided I wasn't going to confront her at home. I was going to go to Marlowe's. Quietly. Sit outside. Watch. Just to know. Just to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined everything. That the dancing, the messages, the lie about the green dress, they weren't just noise in my head. They were real. Because if I saw it with my own eyes, I wouldn't need to ask questions anymore. I'd already have the answers. Friday came. She left the apartment wearing a sleek black dress I'd never seen before. Her hair pulled up. Red lipstick. She said it was a networking dinner for a client, that she might be late, that I shouldn't wait up. I nodded, told her to have a great night, kissed her cheek. She smiled and left like it was the most ordinary evening in the world. I followed 20 minutes later. Not directly. I took the long way, stopped for gas, parked 4 blocks away from Marlowe's, and walked the rest in the rain. I didn't bring an umbrella. I don't even know why. I think I wanted to feel uncomfortable, to punish myself for letting it get this far. From across the street, I spotted her right away. She was already there, sitting at a window booth. Alone, for now. She checked her phone, glanced at the door, and smiled. A minute later, Beckett walked in wearing a gray button-up shirt and that same smug confidence I'd seen at the wedding. He kissed her on the cheek, sat down, and then something inside me cracked wide open. She reached across the table and took his hand. She leaned in and whispered something that made him laugh. They clinked glasses, and that's when I realized this wasn't a conversation. This was a continuation. I didn't go inside. I didn't cause a scene. I just stood there for a full 40 minutes in the cold drizzle, watching my wife on a date with the man she slow danced with on our wedding night. She wasn't confused. She wasn't torn. She was comfortable. And the scariest part of all, she looked happy. Happier than she ever looked with me. I walked back to my car soaked to the bone, sat behind the wheel, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror like I didn't recognize myself. Because I didn't. I wasn't the man who got married a month ago. I wasn't even a husband anymore. I was just a placeholder. A ghost in his own story, finally starting to realize that maybe he'd never been chosen at all. And still, I didn't leave. Not yet. Because there was one more thing I needed to see. Not her lies. Not the affair. Not the dinners. I needed to see what she'd do when I stopped playing along. The next morning, I didn't bring it up. I made coffee, washed the dishes she'd left in the sink, folded the throw blanket on the couch that always somehow ended up crumpled near her side. I didn't ask about her dinner or the red lipstick stain I found later on a napkin stuffed into her purse. And that's what unsettled her. Not the silence itself, but the kind of silence I gave her. Not passive, not awkward, calculated. The silence of a man who wasn't lost anymore, but simply waiting for the right time to leave. She noticed. I saw it in her eyes when she caught me watching her pack for the weekend. "I'm heading to Chloe's lake house," she said casually, zipping her duffel. "Just us girls. I'll be back Sunday night." She avoided eye contact when she said it, and I didn't challenge her. Didn't ask which Chloe. She had 3 in her contacts. I just nodded, kissed the side of her head, and said, "Have fun." Then I waited. An hour later, I watched her car pull away from the curb, turned back inside, and started searching. Not out of desperation. Out of quiet resolve. I needed to know how deep this thing ran. How long I'd been the backup plan. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Her backup email, something I only knew existed because I once saw it autofill when she logged into a hotel rewards site. I guessed the password. I don't even know why I tried. Maybe I hoped I'd be wrong. But the second it opened, I wished I hadn't seen what was inside. There were confirmations. Receipts. Conversations with Beckett under a name she saved as Cassie J. One of the emails was a forwarded boarding pass from 3 weeks ago, New York to Charleston. She had never mentioned a work trip to Charleston. There were also photos. Not explicit, but close. Her in a towel at what looked like a hotel spa. A selfie of them both at a rooftop bar, clinking glasses, her hand on his knee. My wife, my brand new wife, living a second life on hotel balconies and private dinners while I sat at home fixing the lock on our bathroom door and wondering if we needed a new shower curtain. But the worst part, the part that really gutted me, was an unsent draft. It was addressed to him. The subject line, "I keep thinking about what you said." And the body, short, unfinished, raw. "I wish I'd met you first. Maybe in another life, we wouldn't have had to." She stopped there. Never hit send. But that was enough. That single sentence told me everything. I closed the laptop, shut off the lights, and sat in the dark for an hour. No tears. Just a dull, pressing ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. She had already mourned the version of us I thought we were building. I was the only one still holding the pieces, trying to build a home out of the ashes. But I wasn't going to burn with it. When she came back Sunday night, something shifted. She walked in all smiles, holding a bottle of wine, hair windblown like she'd just stepped out of a commercial. "Lake was freezing but amazing," she said, kicking off her shoes. "Chloe sends hugs." I looked up from the couch, muted the TV, and just said, "Cool." That was it. She blinked, thrown off. "That's it." "Yeah," I replied, eyes flat. "Hope it was fun." She watched me for a few seconds, waiting for the questions that never came. Then she headed into the bedroom, slower than usual, her smile fading just enough for me to notice. That was the first time I saw her unsure. The first time she didn't know what I knew. And that terrified her more than any fight would have. I'd finally become a stranger in my own home. And she didn't know how to read me anymore. And that, somehow, was the first real power I'd felt in weeks. But I wasn't finished. Because the next step wasn't silence. It was disappearing, completely, without warning, without drama. Just like she did when she danced with him at our wedding, while I stood clapping for something I didn't understand. I didn't pack a suitcase. That would have been too obvious. I didn't write a note, didn't send a goodbye text, didn't change my relationship status. I just started pulling myself out, thread by thread, so quietly that she wouldn't notice the unraveling until it was already over. While she was at work one morning, I started moving things into a storage unit 2 blocks away. Just the essentials. My tools, old journals, the photo albums she never opened. I left the things she touched. The throw pillows she picked. Her espresso machine. The painting of the ferry boat, she said, reminded her of childhood. I didn't want to leave a hole. I wanted her to sit in the apartment and feel like nothing had changed, until she looked closely and saw it had all changed. I started paying rent on a month-to-month studio across town under a different name. A quiet place above a bookstore, nothing fancy. I chose it because it didn't feel like anything we'd ever shared. No white marble countertops. No couples decor. Just solitude. And a window that faced west so the sun would always set on me, not rise on what I'd lost. She didn't notice the missing items at first. Not even when I swapped my usual cologne for a brand new bottle and stopped kissing her goodbye in the mornings. She chalked it up to stress. Probably told herself I was just adjusting to married life. Maybe even believed that her late-night messages and hidden dinner plans didn't count as betrayal because they never technically crossed the line. But I had crossed mine. And once I did, there was no going back. The last real conversation we had was over pasta. She made it from scratch, tried to be sweet. "I feel like you're somewhere else lately," she said with a soft smile. "Is everything okay?" I looked her in the eye and said, "Everything's fine." And for once, I wasn't lying. Everything was fine, because I had stopped hoping for her to come clean. I no longer needed her confession. I had already written my own ending. The next night, she fell asleep early after drinking too much wine with her coworkers. I waited an hour, then slipped out. I left my ring on the nightstand, placed carefully next to the photo of us from the honeymoon, the one she insisted we frame, even though she cut out the beach background and cropped it tight around our faces, as if the world outside that moment didn't matter. I walked out without looking back. No keys, no coat, just my wallet and a plan. The city was silent as I walked. It felt cleaner than it ever had, like I'd finally stopped carrying something heavy I was never meant to hold. I reached the studio by midnight and sat on the bare mattress, watching the blinking light of a street lamp outside my window. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just breathed. 2 days later, the text started. "Piper, where are you? Piper, are you okay? Piper, this isn't funny, Irving. Call me. Piper, are you really doing this? Piper, what the hell is going on?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted the silence to stretch long enough for her to start hearing her own thoughts instead of mine. To walk through our apartment and notice the empty spots on the shelves, the missing jacket from the hallway hook, the absence of my toothbrush. I wanted her to remember every moment she laughed at her phone while I sat beside her. Every late night, she said she was with the girls. Every look she gave Beckett like he was the one who really knew her. The text stopped on day 4. Then came the email. Subject, please. I don't know what you want. Still, I said nothing. Because it wasn't about what I wanted anymore. It was about what I didn't want. Her explanations, her rewrites, her carefully constructed damage control. And soon, when the truth finally landed in her lap, it wouldn't be me she'd need to answer to. It would be the version of herself she thought she could keep hidden forever. I waited exactly 7 days before I sent it. 1 week of silence. 1 week of letting her world tilt just enough to feel the weight of everything she thought would never catch up to her. Then I wrote the email. Not bitter, not cruel, just honest. And that, I think, hurt more than anything else I could have said. It started simply. Piper, you married a man who clapped while you danced with someone else. And I let you, because I wanted to believe I mattered to you. I don't think you're evil. I think you're unfinished. but I can't build a life with someone still looking over their shoulder. I didn't rehash the texts, or the dinners, or the messages written under false names. She knew what she did, and I finally knew what I wouldn't tolerate. I told her I'd already filed the annulment paperwork, that I wouldn't be dragging her through anything public or messy. No blame, no drama. Just done. I told her she could keep the apartment, the couch, even the framed photo from the honeymoon, if she wanted to hang on to the version of us she liked best. I just asked for one thing in return, that she stop pretending. No response came that day, or the next, but a few days later, a single envelope arrived at my new place. No return address, just my name in her handwriting. Inside was a Polaroid. Us, at the rehearsal dinner, mid-laugh, completely unaware the photo had been taken. She had written 5 words on the back. You deserve to be first. That was the last I ever heard from her. And honestly, that was enough. I still have the photo, tucked in a drawer. Not because I miss her, but because it reminds me who I was. The man who stayed quiet, loyal, and hopeful, even when everything inside him knew something was wrong. And I'm not him anymore. I still believe in love. Still believe in shared laughter, in quiet mornings, in truth. But now, I believe in those things with someone who looks at me like I'm not a substitute, but a choice. These days, I don't need closure from Piper. I found it somewhere between the moment I watched her lie and the second I stopped needing her to admit it. I moved forward. I built a life that feels like mine again. And someday, when someone slow dances with me under string lights, I know it'll be real, because this time, I'll be the only one in her eyes. Thanks for staying with me through this story. Tell me in the comments, at what point would you have walked away? Was it the dance, the dinner, or the silence that followed? And don't forget, you're on Reddit Confessions, where every story has more than one ending, but some of them finally feel right.